do a little intro here. Hey folks, my name is Pat. My wife and I own DNS here. I see a lot of familiar faces, some new ones, and so if you don't know, we do these seminars usually right before the opener every Thursday for 3 weeks before we kick things off, and super happy to keep that tradition going. Gene did it for many years, so happy to keep it rocking and rolling. Tonight we have Dave Rowe from the DNR. He's the Southern Fisheries Team Supervisor and has been with the DNR since '98. So yeah, a lot of history there. He's going to explain what our Madison lakes look like and the fish populations, and and explains some of the rationale behind the recent regulation changes. He was not the person that made those decisions, so don't shoot the messenger here.
You can shoot me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was part of the decision-making process.
But
I think you'll see the data is pretty clear that we needed to do something.
Right. So I think I got everything. We are doing, since it isn't like a fishing-related thing, I've got some gift cards I'll be giving away for the raffle. Make sure you've filled out your name on a little blue ticket, and we'll draw some prizes at the end. And I'll be doing 10% off everything in the store if you want to buy anything tonight, because I appreciate everybody coming out. So I guess that's it. So let's welcome Dave.
Thank you, Pat, and appreciate the invite, and I'm happy to come and talk. Love explaining what we're doing and why we're doing it, and share some updates and kind of the status of some of the things that we see on the Madison lakes. If you have other area questions too, like you go up to the river or whatever, I'm happy to answer those at the end. As I'm going through the talk, if there's something that's not clear or something that you want to ask a clarifying question on, feel free to stop me and say, hey, can you explain that a little better? If you want to engage in a bit of a debate or a back and forth, let's wait kind of till the end, and I'm happy to do that, but I don't want to slow down the presentation as I'm giving it, okay? So today, awesome day. I was up on the Wisconsin River netting sturgeon. The sturgeon are just getting ready to spawn, so it was a fun day to be out on the water, and we netted 23 different sturgeon. Probably about 20% of them had pit tags in them, so we'd handled them before. Biggest fish was 62, hard female. She wasn't quite ready yet. I don't know if you caught this, but the Fish and Wildlife Service just recently made a decision to not list lake sturgeon as an endangered species. And mostly because of that is because the Great Lakes states, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, have been so active in sturgeon management, and especially Wisconsin. We have a very long history of the Winnebago chain and doing sturgeon restoration stocking, sturgeon habitat management, and sturgeon regulations that are very protective. And so we not only have the spearing season on Winnebago, but we have hook and line seasons. And we just proposed catch and release hook and line seasons on some other waters too. So because of the very proactive management that the states, especially in the Great Lakes region, were doing, the federals decided to not list lake sturgeon as an endangered species, which I think was really great. So tonight's talk, I'm going to give you the regulation changes for 2024 that just went in, the change on Mendota to a 10 bag for panfish, and then the statewide switch to a 3 bag for walleye. The 3 bag for walleye it's not simply switching to 3 bag because the total daily bag limit is still 5, but each water, the maximum is now 3. So you could catch 3 on Mendota and still go to Monona, catch 2 more for your total daily bag. So it's a little bit confusing there, but your total daily bag is still 5, but each individual water, the maximum daily bag is 3.
Why do they do that? I mean, I can't imagine too many people like to do that.
Well, we do it with trout. So like your total daily bag for trout is 5, but you can go to one stream and catch 3, and then you can go to another stream and catch 2. I think the idea was that we were more worried about each water being regulated differently. And so the main reason for the reg change with walleyes was simplicity, and I'll get into that and show you some of that. but we wanted every lake to be the same. So no matter where you go, pretty much it's 3 bags. So the ceded territory was already all 3, and now everywhere else is 3. Then at the end, I'll kind of go through just an update on the lakes, Mendota, Monona, Wingrove, Obisque, Gonza, and then I'll talk a little bit about the PFAS contamination at the airport and what that means for the Madison lakes. So the first thing is the Mendota, the 10 bag. So we're reducing it from 25 down to 10. It was proposed as a citizen resolution during the Wisconsin Conservation Congress meeting in Dane County in 2022. So a citizen wrote the resolution saying, hey, we think we should do that. It was voted on at the Dane County meeting favorably. At the same time, we had already been internally at the DNR talking about lowering the bag limit on Mendota, specifically for perch. So I had, even before Dan Oley, the former Dane County biologist, had suggested, hey, the perch really need to do something. Let's lower the bag limit to 10. At the same time, I had suggested lowering the bass size limit and lowering the northern pike size limit as kind of a reverse biomanipulation, and I'll talk about the biomanipulation project in a little bit. But internally, there was some discussion at the DNR, and it didn't really move forward, and so we said, okay. But then when the resolution came through the Conservation Congress, he said, let's do it, let's put it forward. And so last year, in 2023, we proposed it as a rule change at the spring hearing, and here's the vote. And statewide, the vote was, almost 4,000 to about 600, and locally, Dane County, it was 400 to 46. So really overwhelmingly in support when we went to the Conservation Congress of, yes, this is a good regulation to put into place. So we used that information, plus the biology I'm going to show you in a little bit to say, yeah, this is a good rule to put into place.
Was there any consideration for making it 15?
Good question, and the answer is no, because we at the DNR are limited to regulations that are in what we call our toolbox. And so just like you have a hammer and a screwdriver and whatever, we try to limit the number of different regulations we have so that we have some simplicity and some consistency. And right now we're limited to a 10 bag and a 25 bag. So 10 bag when we want to be conservative, and the statewide 25 bag. There is an experimental package of lakes, and it's about 100 lakes throughout the state that are looking at one where it's a 15 bag limit with 5, 5, and 5. There's another one where it's a 25 bag limit with 10, 10, and 10, so you can have 10 of one species up to 25. And there's another one where it's 15 and 5 seasonally in the month of May and June. And so they're looking at those 3 different regs, and they were randomly assigned to lakes. So biologists were asked, what's a good lake that you want to look at where the average size of the panfish are getting fished down because they're growing well, but the amount of harvest is making the average size in the population smaller. And we didn't have any lakes in our area that really fit that, because I'll show you the data in a bit. Our fish are growing fine and they're not getting cropped off. We've got a different problem going on. But the 100 lakes statewide, then they said, okay, these all fit these criteria for good growth, but their average size is reduced. They randomly assigned one of those experimental treatments, and that experiment should end in 2026, and our panfish team is going to come out with a recommendation if we change or add something to the toolbox. So a 15 and 5 or simply a 5 bag on a specific species might be one of the recommendations that comes out of that. But right now we're limited to a 10 bag or a 25 bag. So now into some of the biology. So it was a popularly supported decision. So what this is this is our spring electrofishing catch rate through time, so 2003 to 2023, so 20 years of data when we go out in May and June and we shock at night and we collect bass panfish. This isn't early spring walleye shocking, this is intended to target bass and panfish. And you'll see the 5 different lakes in different colors, up to 1,000 per mile of shoreline, down to 0. So it's the number per length of shoreline we shock, how many fish we net. And so, this blue line here is Wingra, and this gray line is Monona. They're bluegill factories, right? They crank them out. And so like 800 fish per mile is basically as fast as we can dip them out of the water. Like we go along and it's like a cloud of bluegills and we're dipping. So Kegonza and Mendota are these lines at the bottom. And so now here's just the Mendota data. And so you can see that Mendota back in the early 2000s, 60 per mile, 95 per mile, pretty decent. And then these reference lines on here are for two-story lakes. So lakes that are big, deep lakes that have a cold bottom and a top. So other lakes to compare it to would be like Devil's Lake, Lake Geneva, Big Green. So only lakes that are similar to Mendota are we comparing this. And that yellow line is the median, or the 50th percentile. So Mendota used to be average right in that group of two-story lakes. Wasn't the 95th percentile, wasn't the 75th, wasn't the bottom. But something happened here where now our bluegill catch rate dropped down to below the 25th percentile or even the 5th percentile. Really, really poorly performing. Okay? So it used to be average, and then something happened, and it turned into kind of a stinker. So here's some more data. This is from our 2019 survey of the lake, and this is the age structure. So the number of fish in our sample and the age at which they are. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This one's the age. This is the length. So these are the lengths and the number of fish in the sample. So 4-inch fish, 6-inch fish, 8-inch fish, 10-inch fish. And so one thing you see in Mendota is really great size structure, big bluegills. Where are the little guys? Why is the average fish in this lake 8 inches? Okay, so that tells me, oh, something's happened with recruitment. We're not getting those little guys into the population. So you look at the age structure from that sample, and here's the age, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so on. We're missing 6-year-olds, we're missing 1s and 2-year-olds. So there's something happening with recruitment where some years the bluegills don't pull off a good spawn. And that's really unusual for bluegills because they're nest spawners and they guard their nests. And unlike walleye, which just throw their eggs on the shore and hope for the best, the bluegill and the bass and the crappies actually offer some parental care. And so usually we get a pretty even distribution where every year and then it kind of just tails off as you know, some get harvested and some die through time. But this missing year classes and these missing year classes tells us something is going on. The other thing that's really weird, and Mendota, even looking historically in the data, the bluegills in Mendota grow fast. But this is, again, these two-story lakes, the average growth, so the age in years versus the length. And so you see that Mendota, our sample, these fish are growing extremely fast compared to other lakes in that same category. So a 1-year-old bluegill, instead of being a 2.5-incher in Mendota, is a 5-inch fish. They're growing that fast. It's like, well, what in the heck? How can these fish be growing that fast? And we've got some year classes missing. Something really weird is going on with these bluegills. Plus the abundance data I showed you where they're just not that abundant anymore. All right, so we got these questions about the bluegill going on. Let's talk a little about yellow perch. One of the things that's really neat about yellow perch on Mendota is we do a different assessment. We use gill nets. Very rarely does the Wisconsin DNR use gill nets because they're worried about killing fish and, oh, you know, the walleyes in our lake. So Minnesota will use gill nets. In Wisconsin, we very rarely use gill nets. We've been using gill nets in Mendota since 2014 because when the lake turns over in the fall, all those perch kind of get mixed up in their size groups and go out to deeper water, and it's a perfect opportunity to sample all the different ages. And so these gill nets that we run are very small mesh up to pretty big mesh, and we run 6 different sizes, and it catches the different ages of perch in our nets. And so it gets us a really good example of what the perch population is like in the fall, so it lets us document how much reproduction there was in that spring too. So this is data from the UW Center for Limnology. That's not DNR data, but I borrowed it from them. And actually, I was a student in the university back in the early 90s, so I helped collect some of this data as a student. But you can, and this is from summer gill nets, not the fall gill nets that we run at the DNR, but these are summer gill net panels that they set out in the middle of the lake. And maybe you've seen them. They have lights on them at night, and they're big rollers, and they go from the top all the way to the bottom, and they run them on the deep hole of the lake. The gill net size here is 1.5, 2, and 2.5. So it only catches some of the bigger fish. It doesn't catch lots of the little guys. But you can definitely see a trend starting in 1981 where the perch were pretty good, right? I mean, we're talking 250 per night in these nets out in the middle of the lake. But something happens again in the late 2000s where now we see very little perch in those guys. And they've run these same nets for 40 years, right? And so this data set really says, and I told you that we were considering a perch bag limit change even before the bluegill, the panfish one was suggested. And this data was part of it. We knew that the perch numbers just weren't what they used to be. I grew up in Middleton. I used to go perch fishing all the time in the 90s and late 80s. It's not what it was. And so we really knew that we had to do something. So here is our DNR fall gill net data. And you can see a couple things in here. One is we catch a lot more fish, but we are intending specifically to catch perch. Those UW nets are meant to just survey whatever's in the lake, and they're consistent through time, but we are focused on trying to sample perch with our set. And so we catch more fish because we're intentionally trying to target those perch. And you see that there's some good years and there's some bad years. And so I don't know if you guys are perch fishermen, maybe you remember back in 2016 it got pretty good, and then like 2019, 2020 it got pretty good, and then it then they disappear. And so there's these like, oh, if it's getting good, and then it does, no, it's not good anymore. Oh, it's getting good, and last year was kind of a stinker of a year too, right? Well, not this, who could fish? There was no ice, but the year before it just wasn't, 2023 wasn't that great of a year. So what these are, and I don't expect you to read them all, is they're the age frequency graphs from all those years. So every year we take the spine off the anal ray, an anal spine off the fin of the fish, and we cross-section it just like a tree, because the water's warm in the summer, they grow fast, and the water's cold in the winter, they grow slow. In the spines, it leaves a cross-section just like a tree ring, and so we can age the fish. And so we do that every year, and you can see some of these years, okay, we've got 2016, there's age zeros, there's age ones, and it's coming on. Well, some years you don't have much, and 2023 we didn't have much. So I'm going to show all this data in one graph, and it's going to get pretty complicated, but I'm going to go real slow. So this is the sample year, 2014 through 2023. This is the year class that those fish were born. And this is the number caught in the sample. So if you look at 2016, this rusty color is 2016, and it represents the age 0 perch in that year. So there was a bunch of age 0s, a bunch of age 1s, some age 2s, some 3s, some 4s, and a sprinkling of 5s. That next year, those age 0s that were there in 2016 are now the age 1s. Okay? So you can follow a specific year class through this graph depending on the color. So the 2017 year class, you can look. So the first thing that jumps out to me in this analysis is the fish don't get older than 4 years old. Once they get to be catchable size, they disappear. So that 2016 year class, which was a really big year class, uh-oh, my batteries are running out. That 2016 year class, they made it to 7 years, but that's pretty rare. The rest of them, once they get to be about 4 years old, they're fished out. And so we get these, okay, we got a good year class coming through, but then they just disappear. So same thing with the perch as the bluegills. We have fantastic, absolutely crazy growth. So one thing that's different with the perch sample is their fall samples. So we actually have age 0 fish that haven't been through a full year. They were spawned earlier that year, so we have age 0s. So you kind of, in this example, we normally use spring data for lake fish. So you got to compare these. So this dot would really be comparable to here, but still just super fast growth. And Mendota is a productive lake. It's a big productive lake, and so fast growth is expected, but this faster growth is really just a head scratcher. And then again, once they get to be catchable size, they don't keep growing. I mean, they kind of peak out and they get fished out once they get to be there. So what's going on? I think a couple things. And this is a picture of me fishing bluegills on Lake Mendota. So the fishermen like to take the fish home, right? The perch, once they get to be catchable size, disappear. The bluegills, they get harvested, right? But there's more than that going on. And so this is a very simple version of the food web in Mendota with walleye and pike as the predators. Cisco really don't exist in the lake anymore. They got kind of wiped out in the 90s. But the perch are there. And so if you are long enough in the tooth, you remember the biomanipulation project. It was originally intended to stock those predator fish to decrease the planktivorous fish so that there'd be more zooplankton to eat the algae, and then the lake would be cleaner because we stocked all these predator fish. Well, that was in the late 80s. The predator fish did okay, but got fished out right away, and so then all the size limits got increased to try to keep the predator fish in the lake. And so we thought, okay, are the predator fish causing these year class failures? Is something going on? But it's like, well, you don't see the year class failures until the mid 2000s. And that biomanipulation project had been going on for way longer than that. So I don't think it's the predator fish. Unfortunately, the other thing besides people harvesting is our friend the spiny water flea. The spiny water flea showed up in Lake Mendota in 2009. When did the bluegills start to have a problem? 2009. When did the perch year classes? The perch year classes had problems a little bit before that, but haven't recovered since 2009. So one of the things I think is not only are we having some fishing issues with fishing down the population, but the normal thing we would see when you overfish them is that size structure gets fished down because people want the bigger fish. But the fast growth rate of these fish that are growing so absolutely fast masks that because they just grow like gangbusters and we don't see the size structure being fished down because they're growing so fast. And it's because of the spiny water fleas. The spiny water fleas compete with the bluegills and the perch when they're this big. They're eating the exact same food, and these things are able to outcompete. And so we're having year class failures because this is happening. But once they get big enough to eat them, they're like a little protein pill or a protein shake, and they grow like gangbusters. And so the combination of having an invasive species causing year class and recruitment problems, but at the same time, once those fish get big enough to eat them, causes them to grow like gangbusters, has kind of changed some of the dynamics on Mendota. So with all that in mind, one of the things that we can control is the fishermen. And so we can't control the fishermen. We can control the bag limit. So hopefully by reducing the amount of fish harvested, we can actually get some of those bluegills and perch to eat more of the spiny water fleas, maybe affect some biological control that way. And so it's kind of a big experiment. I'm in communication with the Center for Limnology about, is this something that we want to do more research on? And they said, yeah, for sure. They've already published a couple papers looking at this. And so it's a 10 bag. Hopefully the bluegill numbers and the perch numbers come up. We get some control of the spiny water fleas or some influence on them, and that actually then even increases more recruitment of the bluegill and the perch. So that's what we're thinking for panfish. Any questions on the panfish stuff?
How long until you might get measurable results?
Great question. I don't know. I mean, so if you think about it and you go back to like these age structures, a perch is a 5-6-year-old fish. 1 or 2 generations is normally what we think of to actually have some impact. And so 10, 12 years. If really the harvest is reduced that much, we should see the fishing get better, but it may not have huge impacts on the spiny water fleas right away. So we'll see. I'm hoping to see more fish in the population sooner than that, but realistically 2 generations of fish is when we would expect to see, and a change that stabilizes too into a new pattern.
Is there any other known way to battle the spiny water flea?
No, prevention is the number one thing, and once they're in your system. So the other thing that's interesting is, Big Green and Geneva don't have spiny water fleas as far as we know. And so that'll be an interesting thing because Big Green's a good bluegill factory too. I don't know if you've ever gone up and fished Big Green, but it's kind of like Mendota where these bays that hold a lot of fish and there's big bluegills and there's nice bluegills. But if spinies get in there and we see the same pattern of bluegill recruitment failing, but growth increasing, it'll be a real confirmation of what our suspicion is. I hope they don't. I hope they don't get in there. They're in Trout Lake up north, but those lakes are so clean and oligotrophic, so they don't have much nutrients. They may not have some of the same patterns that we see down here. Plus, trout still has Cisco, whereas our Cisco are just there's a remnant of Cisco in the lake. So that's a great point. And what I was going to say is that one of the things we might try to do if the Ciscos continue to show us that they're coming back, and Center for Limnology and their summer gill nets actually got some little guys, is try to do some stocking of Cisco, because the Cisco would prey on the spiny water fleas too. And so if we could help restore the Cisco faster, it actually might offer some control there too. So that's another experimental thing we could do. Right, great question. Monona is a little bit different of a lake. So think about Monona, and it's got Squaw Bay and Turville Bay and Monona Bay, and these shallow littoral areas that are really full of plants. Mendota doesn't have as much of that relative to the lake size, right? And same thing with Waubesa. And so if I go back to that bluegill graph, like Wingra, Waubesa, Monona, they crank out the bluegills because they've got that great littoral zone habitat. Kegonsa and Mendota, which are more these big bowls that are pelagic in their nature, seem to not have the same characteristics. And so, I mean, if you could and make the whole North Bay of Mendota, vegetated and full of plant, the wind will erode it, it wouldn't work. But if you could do some habitat thing to try to increase the littoral zone, you might see a different outcome. But I think the lake shape of Mendota and Kegonsa is different than Monona and Waubesa and Wingra.
If you stock early bluegill in the Mendota, would that, would like a really aggressive stocking, would that?
So in theory it might, because now you're getting past that recruitment bottleneck of competition with the spinies. The problem is I don't think we can produce that many bluegills. We're already struggling with some resources. And so the idea of stocking, if we're going to stock restoration stocking of Cisco, that would be this deep water pelagic predator on them, would be probably we would try first before stocking bluegills. But I did think about if it's a recruitment bottleneck, would bluegill stocking be effective? The problem is it's a 9,000 acre lake, right? And so maybe, but I don't see us doing it just yet.
And then just to follow up, what about the catfish population in Mendota? It's really impressive. They must eat a lot of bluegill and perch.
Not anymore. I'll talk about it at the end of the talk. I'll talk about that.
Okay.
Other questions on the panfish bag limit and why we did it? Walleye statewide management plan. And one of the things that people said is we want simple regulations. So lake to lake, we know what the bag limit is the same. And there was places like Lake Wisconsin where people were like, oh, they're really over harvesting. And so both to manage the concern of over harvest and for simplicity, it was proposed last year. It was an advisory question in 2022 and then a rule change last year. And again, if you look at the voting numbers here, I don't know why my laser pointer won't work. Oh well. The really well supported at the Conservation Congress. People wanted it. So I think people are happy with the 3-bag. What does it mean for us? And this is my son. I was lucky enough to get him on the cover of the regs back in 2017. That's Lake Kegonsa. We were out there. But so most of our southern Wisconsin walleye populations are stocked. And so they're already at 18 and 3, and so it's not a big change. The changes are for Monona, Waubesa, Kegonsa, where we had a 5-bag and 15. And then the Wisconsin River and Lake Wisconsin, where they've got the protected slot, it'll go down to a 3-bag, but the protected slot stays in place. And we've heard from a lot of people that think that that's really, really good. But Wisconsin, Lake Wisconsin, the Wisconsin River, that's all natural reproduction. There's no stocking there at all. And then the Rock River below Indianford now will be consistent. Koshkanon went to a 3-bag already with an 18 and 3. And so really it's just this making it simple, everywhere there's a 3-bag, and people seem to be supportive of that. So any questions on the walleye bag change?
Not that part of it, but from the enforcement side, you said if you fish 2 different bodies of water, you get 3 and 2. In the regulation book, I got confused. It says you can't have those first 3 in your possession.
That's true.
So
So what you need to do, is, go put them in your truck. So let's say you're fishing Wabisa, you get lucky and you get your 3 fish on Wabisa. You need to go back to your vehicle, put them in a cooler in your vehicle, and then you can go up to Monona or up to the river and then fish. But you may not have the 3 from a different water body in your possession on the water or on the shoreline, because that counts as part of your daily bag for that water.
Except in there it doesn't say on the water or on the shoreline. It would be much clearer if it did.
Okay.
You don't have to talk about trucks and coolers, I don't think, but you just say that they can't be in your possession on the water.
Okay.
The guy will think, okay, I can't have them on the water, I gotta leave them in my truck.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the wardens and I, we've had a big powwow about this because they've had the same concerns about making sure that people understand and aren't in jeopardy. And they're going to be pretty, I think, understanding. But we want to make it clear that if you get your bag limit on one water body, you can't go to the other water body with those in your possession and continue to fish.
It's fair, it's just a little confusing and brand new.
Yeah.
It's a good rule.
Or you
Right.
could fish with me, I never have that problem.
No, it is a great rule.
Right. So, and I've actually encountered this before because if the Menominee River, the border with Michigan, in the spring right now, there's 3 different seasons there. There's the Michigan Lake Michigan Green Bay, Wisconsin Green Bay, and the Menominee River, and they all have a bag limit of 1. And so a guy walleye fishing could go into the Menominee, catch his 1 fish, come back to the boat ramp, put that one in his truck, go out in Michigan, catch 1 fish in Michigan, come back, put that in his truck, go out on Green Bay, Wisconsin, catch 1 fish, put back in his truck. And so I've seen it done before. Like I said, we do it with trout, but it's kind of new. But you're right. So we can look at the regs, the way it's worded in the reg booklet, and clean that up a little bit too. So the Madison Lakes. So I'm just going to give some updates, kind of what's happening, what to be talked about. So Mendota, our last survey was 2019. I showed you the bluegill data from that. This is a report that's available on the DNR website. So if you go to the DNR website and you search for fisheries surveys, the ones that have reports written are available there with all these graphs and data and write-ups from the biologists. I'm going to brag a little bit and say my fish team has done an excellent job both with lake reports and trout reports, and getting our stuff published right away. It doesn't do you guys any good if the data is 6 years old or 7 years old. And so we really pride ourselves with trying to turn those reports around and getting them out about a year after. We need to do some lab work with aging and stuff like that, but we try to get those reports out right away. Mendota has excellent growth of all species. They all really grow really fast. We saw a big increase in walleye from the walleye initiative stocking and switching from small fingerling stocking to large fingerlings. Really effective. The walleye population on Mendota basically tripled. It went from less than 1 fish per acre to about 2.5 or 2.7, I think is what the report says, of walleyes per acre, which is a really good increase. Really effective switch.
LGF means
Large fingerlings. Northern pike are stable, are increasing. They're doing great out there. We're looking at trying to protect spawning habitats. We've stopped stocking northerns. We don't need to stock them on Mendota. They're doing fine on their own. The size limit protects them. Largemouth bass are stable. Smallmouth bass are stable. We took the size limit off a couple years ago, and the only change that followed that was we see more tournaments on Mendota now but they had changed the rules anyways where tournaments could ask for an exemption from the more restrictive legs anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But they're doing great. Like we talked about, the panfish numbers are low and we want to see those get better. And channel cats. So somebody asked about the channel cats. And really the channel cats have not been as abundant as they were 10 years ago. Something happened, and I'll tell you a good story, that Cherokee Marsh used to be really turbid and full of carp, And there was a City of Madison Parks employee who put these snow fence structures out there to try to break waves up so the waves wouldn't erode the shoreline. And it was a valiant effort at trying to put some wave attenuation structures out there, but it didn't really work. The water was still turbid, but the channel catfish, I think, love to use those as artificial spawning habitats. If you were to go to Arkansas or Texas and go to a catfish farm, they have these little half structures that they put on the bottom of the ponds, and the catfish spawn in them like little caves, or they've used old milk jugs, like the big ones from like the old stainless steel ones, milk cans, right? But all of that habitat that was put in Cherokee Marsh acted like spawning habitat. And so it shows in our 2019 report, but also there was a report from 2014 where all of the catfish that were in Mendota were from 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. Those 5 years pulled off enormous year classes of catfish. And those fish are all now 20-some years old. They've either aged out of the population, they've been caught. And so the abundance of catfish in the lake is way down compared to 2014, 2012, when those fish were all like 8, 10 years old. And they would, and I thought at that time, they're part of the reason that the perch, they're eating perch eggs, they're eating bluegill nests. You'd catch them while you're bluegill fishing in the spring, and they're just not there anymore. There's still big catfish in Mendota, but there aren't the numbers that there were. So they're less abundant, they're still there, they're still pulling off some year classes. They're way less than they were in the early 2010s. So I'm not concerned. I mean, they're a third or a fourth of what they were at that point. So, and the other thing I should say about that story is we worked with a commercial fisherman to net carp out of Cherokee, and Cherokee has flipped 100% into a clear water, well-vegetated state. So it's not good habitat for catfish to spawn in anymore because it's like a giant plant filter of the Yahara River coming down, and the water's super clear. Like I actually tried to, last summer, boat up Cherokee to get into Token Creek to investigate a report of a beaver dam up there. I couldn't do it. The plants are so thick. And so Cherokee is a way different lake than it was when it was cranking out all the catfish, but still there.
And from the carp harvest?
Removing the carp prevents all the bottom from being disturbed, and so then the plants can grow. And as soon as the water's clearer, the light can penetrate and the plants can grow. So same thing happened on Wingra. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Same thing on Kegonsa. I'll show you some data, actually.
Has there been any consideration about changing the 40-inch size limit on northern?
There has been, and that was one of the things. So that 40-inch came in as part of the biomanipulation project. We've done some informal studies, and I don't know if any of you have ever been creeled by the UW creel. They did kind of an informal creel, and we were asking the question about, do people like the trophy management? And we've gotten kind of mixed responses. Some people really like it, some people don't like it. We did a different mail survey to all the people in south central Wisconsin that asked, how should we manage northern pike? And predominantly the answer, we asked them 4 options. One is manage it for a harvest opportunity, we don't care about size. Manage it for a quality sized fishery with some harvest restriction. Manage it for a trophy opportunity, or I don't care. Okay? So you can imagine when we ask those questions like panfish, most people say we don't care about size, just harvest. And actually more and more people are asking to manage those for quality size. Walleye was like a perfect split between harvest for food and manage for quality size. Bass, trout, northern pike were all managed for quality size. Very, very clearly like managed for quality size with some restricted harvest. Sturgeon and muskie were managed as trophy species. Catfish were actually no opinion. Most people didn't care what happened with catfish. So based on those 2 data, we aren't gonna change anything yet. But we wanted to do a creel survey and actually ask people on Mendota, do you want to manage it with a lower size limit for pike? But it's pretty split. There's some people who love the trophy size limit on there, and some people who are like, I'd rather 26 or 32. So.
On that same topic, you say the northern pike are stable or increasing. 30 to 39-inch fish?
Sure are.
Okay. Are they eating any bluegills?
Mhm.
Okay.
But like I showed you, those fish were present back when the bluegills were still doing good. Like the change is the spiny water flea, not the change in the predator densities. The predator densities all got increased in like the 90s. So even when, like I showed you, the 2003 through 2007 bluegill numbers were average, the predator densities were high at that point too. So it's not, I don't think it's the predator numbers that are doing it. It's the spinies.
I'm not originally from Madison. When did the 40-inch limit on the plate go into effect?
So it was part of that biomanipulation project. So like I said, they first wanted to hyper stock everything, but then people realized, oh, there's all these predator fish in here, and so they came in and fished them. And so the trophy size limit went in the mid-90s. It was a response. Like it first went to 26, and then it jumped up to 32, and then it jumped up to 40.
But like you said, your graph showed that there were good years and
Yeah.
everything after that. I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah.
The rule.
Do you change the stocking numbers when you have like increases, you know, like walleye increase? Does that change how much you stock the next?
Yes, good point. So when we started stocking as part of the walleye initiative project in 2014, we were stocking at 10 large fingerlings per acre. So 9,000 acre lake, 90,000 walleyes. We got such a good response that we've cut that in half, and we stock Mendota at 5 walleyes per acre because we want to keep that population between 2 and 4 per acre, and we don't want to go higher than that. I'll give you an example here in a little bit with Wingra, where we've intentionally cut back muskie stocking because there was too many muskies in the lake. So we do adjust our stocking rate based on how well the population is doing or how fast they're growing.
But during that walleye initiative a few years ago, weren't we just like supercharging the walleyes in there?
No, we were doing the normal 10 fish per acre. Like we didn't have an advanced rate. What the difference was is those large fingerlings survived so much better than the small fingerlings. The clear water of Mendota, I think just you can't stock small fingerlings, they get eaten. White bass or the other predators, smallmouth bass. I mean, there's lots of predators in Mendota, and stocking 2-inch walleyes just doesn't work. Stocking 7-inch walleyes works awesome.
Yeah,
So it works so well that we cut in half from 10 down to 5.
Yeah, I thought that the public opinion was that they were doing this walleye initiative, which was really doing a lot more walleye stocking, several years, like 5 years ago. But that was
Yeah, well, but it's statewide it was more. And so a lot of lakes where small fingerlings weren't working anymore, we switched to large fingerlings. So it's more expensive because now you've got to raise them through the hatchery for much longer. You got to feed them minnows. So the walleye initiative was switching a lot of lakes from small fingerlings to large fingerlings. There were some lakes where we did 25 per acre, but I think I'd actually have to look at the data, but there were some lakes that got a super advanced amount.
Mendota was one of them.
It was not. It's always been at 10, and now it's at 5. Lake Monona, poor Lake Monona keeps getting missed on reports. So we have survey data from 2021, but Dan Oley left the fish biologist job and moved on, and we haven't gotten somebody to write that report yet. So there's data there. We're waiting on it. The muskie keep getting bigger. The size limit went to 50 in 2018, and the fish have responded. We're trying to manage that at right around 0.4 fish to 0.5 fish per acre. So we've got it right in there. It's actually, from the 2021 survey, it's actually down a little bit. It was like 0.27 or 0.3. So, but that can be some statistical, but they're not super abundant. Like I said, walleyes, we were looking for 2 to 4 per acre. Muskies are about a half a fish or a little bit less per acre. They're doing great. They're really growing well. It's a super popular fishery. It's great. Monona, largemouth bass, super abundant. Like there's some just awesome bass in Monona. Bluegills, it's a bluegill factory. I mean, the bluegills aren't as big as Waubesa or Mendota, but the numbers are just awesome. And so Monona is a bluegill factory. The only problem with that is the PFAS, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. One thing that's a little bit unusual with Monona is lake sturgeon. And they're in Mendota too. They were stocked in the 1930s, some DNR carp harvesting crews that were on Lake Wisconsin actually caught a bunch, and so in 34, 36, and 37, they were stocked in Mendota and Monona. We've got genetic samples taken off some of the ones we've found, and they tie to the Mississippi, so it's hard to say, was this a remnant population that was from the Rock River system and the Ahara system, or are they the stocked fish that got moved in from the Wisconsin? We know they're not stocked fish from Wolf River system or the Winnebago system because those are genetically different enough that we could tell. But we know we've got a remnant population either from those 1930s stockings. And this fish is not a 100-year-old fish. This is, I mean, it could be, but we know that there's some reproduction happening. Very limited, but there's a real remnant lake sturgeon population. They spawn up at Tenney too. Like they could be like spawning right now up at the dam at Tenney.
Do you think there's a fish from 1937 still swimming?
Could be, but probably not. Because, and the reason I say that is the fish that got moved were adult fish at that time. So it's very possible these fish get to 100, but if they moved an 80-year-old fish in 1937, that fish is not still living, right? So there is reproduction going on. So pretty cool. Lake Wingra. Lake Wingra is another awesome story about carp removal. There was a big carp removal project that was done in 2008. There's the last survey reports available from 2018. So big response in aquatic plants. The DNR has been stocking fewer muskies because Wingra was like almost 3 fish per acre. And for muskies, that's just way too many. And so they were eating all the bass. They were eating a lot of the other fish. And so our goal now for Wingra is 1 fish per acre for muskie. And we're almost there. We've cut back the stocking. And by doing that, we've seen increases in largemouth bass. We switched the size limit to 18, and so there's some really nice bass in Wingra. And what we're hoping is that the bass then eat the bluegills, thin them out a little bit, and we get better growth on the bluegills because that's such a community fishery, such an accessible shoreline. So we are seeing some bluegill size structure improvements. We've actually seen 8-inch bluegills out of Wingra now instead of everything being 5.5. That's one of those where the size structure is from growth, not from over harvest. It's the fish just don't grow because there's so many of them, they're competing with each other and they have slow growth. So by increasing the number of bass, we can hopefully have predation on the bluegills to help us with the growth. One of the interesting things in Wingra is there really never used to be historically pike in there, but the 2018-2019 flooding when Lake Monona actually backed up over the Wingra Dam, we now have plenty of pike in there, and that actually is kind of changing the lake too. We've got some really good estimates of our muskie survival, and before the pike were in there, the muskies we were stocking, 40% of them survived to age 5 or 6. And it's like 40% survival from stocked fish is fantastic. It's like unheard of. So now I think it's probably more similar to the other lakes where it's like 15 to 20% survival of those large fingerlings. But I think the pike are part of that, and that now we've got another big predator in Wingra. And it's really a perfect lake for them, a shallow, marshy lake with lots of vegetation. So I think there's going to be more and more pike in there. It's just something that happened. It wasn't intentional, but the flooding in 2018 when it backed up over the dam.
Why don't you stock more pike in Wingra then?
Well, we don't need to now. I mean, so the previous managers, the idea was manage it for muskie with bass and bluegill, and now we'll have to see a little bit. They stocked walleye in there too, and they never did anything. Like you'd catch the same walleye survey after survey. Like it's not a walleye lake, right? But we'll see what the pike are doing. We really don't need to stock pike. We did a genetic evaluation. Actually, there's going to be a cool Natural Resources magazine issue coming out talking about this. But genetics testing is so inexpensive now that it's like Geraldo or Montel or any of those daytime talk shows where you can sample the parent fish when we spawn them for the hatchery, keep that genetic record of what that parent fish was, and then go out in the wild 4 years later, sample the wild fish and say, with 95.9 or 99.9% accuracy, this fish is an offspring of this fish that we and we know the pairings from the hatchery too. So if we know both parents are fish that we spawned, that fish must be from the hatchery. So we did one with a northern pike genetics experiment with parentage analysis from 2017 to 2020, we stocked the fish, and then 2021 we sampled them. And like Lake Monona, less than, that was like 6% of the fish were contributed from stocking. The rest of them were all wild. And so Koshkanon was 0. Fox Lake in Jefferson was 0. Like none of the stocked fish that we put in, and the lakes are there's so much natural reproduction we don't need to stock. And so muskie is not that way, walleye is not that way, but northern pike, they're doing it on their own and we don't need to stock them. In most of our lakes. Some lakes we had as much as 41% contribution from those stocked fish. In those lakes it's worth stocking and continuing to spend the money to do that.
So with the muskies and the pike, are you gonna have some tiger muskies then with northern?
It's possible, and actually we've seen more hybridization recently in the Madison chain. There are some, but they're natural hybrids. We're not creating tigers anymore. But every once in a while, a muskie and a pike get messed up in nature, and they cross, and so we are seeing some hybridization. So we don't see, there's very little muskie. Muskies don't reproduce in the Madison chain, but there has been some hybridization with pike. Lake Wabisa, actually we're doing Lake Wabisa this year, so we've been out there netting this spring and electrofishing a couple weeks ago. You can get the last survey report, which was from 2017, 2018, that's on the web. Really good walleye population out there. The guys just ran the PE from our electrofishing, and it's just about 3 fish per acre, which is up from the last survey when it was like 2.5 or 2.6 or something like that. So the walleye population is going up. Largemouth bass are abundant, bluegills abundant, crappies are variable. Crappies kind of hit and miss depending on the environmental conditions in the year. But Wabisa's looking really good, I think. There's still, so this is from the 2017 survey. That fish has a Floy tag on it. If you can see that little orange dot on the back, or the orange thing. There's still a couple of them out there. We actually, Paul, you caught the one that was stocked in Kegonsa as part of the Kegonsa Sportsman's Club, but you caught it in Monona, right? It went all, yeah, it went all the way up. So the fish are moving through those 3 lakes, and there's still some of these tagged fish out there that you can be on the lookout for. Lake Kegonsa, so there's a survey that was done last year. The report's not written, but there's a 2016 report out there that's available. Lots of walleye in there too, really good. Northern pike, really good northern pike population on Kegonsa. There's some spillover muskies that go down there. They're there, but pretty low numbers. Bluegill, like I said, it's very similar to Mendota, I think, because it's a pelagic lake and they just grow like gangbusters out there. And I mean, the bluegill fishing on Kegonsa has been really, really good. We did a carp removal project with the Friends of Lake Kegonsa in Dane County, and we hired a contract fisherman. And so this map that I'm showing you is a map that we do using sonar, and it measures the plant height in the water column, and then a computer puts all that together to say the bio volume, or the amount of plants in the water column. And if you look at the maps since 2017, the plant numbers in Kegonsa just keep getting more and more and more. And that was part of the carp removal. It's also part of Dane County's effort to get the extra nutrients out of the lake. The water is clearer, more clarity, and so we're getting better plant growth. And it's really responded really well. There's been some pushback. People are like, oh, now there's too many plants. But plants are really good for fish habitat. Plants are really good for taking extra nutrients out of the lake. They're an important part of the lake that people have to learn to live with and manage. So the carp removal in 2017 on Kegonsa has been really successful. Paul?
I can remember 10 years ago, the weed line was like 7 feet. Now there's weeds out in 15, 17 feet wide. That's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And so we map that every year using the sonar mapping, and it's really shown that. And so it's been really good. And I think the lake is responding healthily, or it's good for the lake that the plants are growing more like that.
Are the perch still healthy on Kegonsa?
You know, that's a great question. And our perch focus has been so on Mendota that I don't really have great data from Kegonsa. We don't do the fall gill netting on any of the other lakes besides Mendota. We see them in our spring pike netting. but I really don't have an answer that, I would say we don't have good data on the perch on Kegonsa. So the last thing I want to talk about, and then I'll open up for any other questions, is PFAS molecules. So things that are on like Teflon cookware or in your Gore-Tex, they're water repellent, they're slippery molecules. There's this realization now that they're really bad when they get into the environment, and they're bad for your health, and they're bad for things. They're really actually not bad for fish. We haven't noticed that the fish get sick from it. Like it's just there, but it gets in the fish, and then when you eat the fish, it's not good for you. They're associated with cancers and thyroid issues and some other hormonal stuff and immune system stuff. And this is kind of where there are fish consumption advisories in Wisconsin right now. Green Bay, Superior, the Wisconsin River, Mississippi, Black Earth Creek, and then the Yahara chain going down the Yahara. Black Earth Creek actually was recently taken off. Not really sure why it got listed to begin with, but the most recent data from Black Earth Creek says the trout have no bad levels of PFAS, so the Black Earth Creek got taken off the list this year, which is good. There's a couple other ones that got added. So these central parts of the Wisconsin River, and then there's a hot spot up here. So the Menominee, the Tyco Controls, the town of Stella up by Rhinelander, they're all associated with known chemicals. So the Stella one by Rhinelander is from paper company sludge that was those plastic coatings on like food wrappers. They would put their sludge on these fields, and they're super high levels. I feel really bad for the people that live around that lake. Our hotspot in Madison is from firefighting foams from the airport, from MATC, and from the Air National Guard. And so that hotspot that exists up by the airport was leaking through some stormwater drains into Starkweather Creek and coming right down into Monona. They've done a recent grouting project to seal that stormwater pipe and try to keep the groundwater from leaking into it and bringing the PFAS-laden water in, and so hopefully that'll help. But the levels are high enough that we should be concerned for eating, and so here are the levels. Below 10 micrograms per kilogram is unrestricted. Like you can eat all the fish you want. 10 to 20 is 2 meals a week, but in Wisconsin we don't have 2 meals a week, so we default 10 to 50 as 1 meal a week, and above 50 to 200, 1 meal a month, and above 200 don't eat. So now I'm going to show you the data from Monona and Waubesa. Okay, so you remember above 50 was 1 meal a month, 10 to 50 is 1 meal a week, and below 10 is eat all you want. So one thing that's different about PFAS, it's not like mercury or PCBs that seems to bioaccumulate. So the big predator fish have higher levels. So crappie, largemouth bass, bluegill, yellow perch, northern pike, this is Monona, Waubesa, Kegonsa are at pretty high levels. Okay? So bluegill are medium, carp, pretty fatty fish are down low. They're not as contaminated for some reason. Who knows what? I don't know the mechanism, but these are the levels we've measured in the lower chain of lakes. Here's Mendota. So here's 10, that threshold. Bass are a little bit above it. Perch are right at it. So they're still in the environment. There's still PFAS in the environment in Mendota, but it's not the same level as like the airport stuff coming down in Starkweather. So Mendota and Wingra, there's no advisories on because they're upstream, but Monona, Waubesa, Kegonsa are downstream. And you know, when this came out, it was shocking to me. I live in McFarland, and my family ate a lot of bluegills out of. Can you take that off the video, Pat? No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's serious, and that like be mindful of if you're going to eat, you know, a lot of fish, that there is these compounds, and hopefully we can ask the city of Madison, we can ask the Air National Guard, we can ask, you know, the Dane County and the airport to clean up that stuff, because actually there's some research that shows it actually, once you've cleaned up the contamination, it moves through the system pretty quickly, and it's not 100 years to clean up. Once you've got the contamination cleaned up, it's much faster, but they've been dragging their feet because who's going to pay for it, right? So I mean, this is personal soapbox here. You can also turn the video off. No, you don't have to turn the video off. But the city of Madison's talking about all this big Lake Monona restoration or revitalization. But it's like, how can you spend all that money to revitalize the lakefront when you haven't even cleaned up the PFAS at the airport yet?
Right.
So that's kind of my soapbox, and it's like I wish they would spend money to clean that up and get that cleaned up. And Dane County is aware of it, and the DNR is aware of it. Everyone knows it's there, but it's been very slow to clean it up, and I wish that it would be quicker, because I like eating bluegills, and I want to feed my kids bluegills that are safe to eat, right?
Does the PFAS suspend in the water, or is it in the sediment? What is it?
Well, so that it doesn't, so you know how some molecules stick to the sediment? It doesn't do that, right? And so some of the dredging projects Dane County has been doing, like they look at the sediment and there are unusually high levels in the sediment. It sticks to certain molecules. And so one of the things that, looking at this, is like maybe invertebrates, so insects or zooplankton, those have more high, like it sticks to the molecules that are in invertebrate, and that's, so things that eat those invertebrates are higher than fish-eating fish. Like, I don't really know the chemistry of it. I don't think anybody knows.
We had an expert scientist at our Yahara Fishing Club, and he said that the typical water sample is 6 inches below the surface, and the cost of PFAS testing is super high. So one time, he was with federal funding, able to test water samples throughout the whole water. It's the same, so you can rely on the same water sample
Right.
at 6 inches, and that'll be the same as bottom.
That was Pat Gorski when he talked at Yahara Fishing Club. I was sick that night. I didn't get, I think Pat gave my talk that night. I was supposed to be there. But yeah, so I mean, it is uniformly distributed, but it doesn't stick to the sediment like some other things. But the why it's acting like this instead of bioaccumulating like some of the other compounds, we don't know. I think the good news is that if you do clean up the contamination, the environment, and it cleans up, it goes away relatively quickly if you can get the contamination cleaned up. So,
Is there a schedule for further testing so that year to year we'll know just what our risk is or isn't?
the DNR will continue to do fish tissue testing, but like Dane County and some of the other entities that are looking, and other parts of the DNR will probably do water quality testing too. But like right now, the next round of testing is to see how effective sealing that pipe was as far as the water coming out of the pipe. Did that decrease that? So there is some additional testing planned, but I'm not aware of the cleanup plan going forward yet. I don't know if they've figured out how to actually clean up the residual that's in the soil around the airport.
Isn't there a big lawsuit with 3M too?
There's a bunch of big lawsuits, yeah. So a lot of the spots, but 3M, the big one, because 3M made the molecules, is with 3M, and so that's one of the things that you hear is like, oh, once that gets settled and there's money to clean up, then we'll do it. But that doesn't help those of us who want to eat bluegills now, right?
Wasn't
So
the thing in Rhineland, or wasn't that popcorn bags?
it was some kind of food.
Like microwave popcorn bags?
Yeah, I think you're right. So I think some paper with a coating, and the Wisconsin River ones too. Those are paper. Those are associated with paper. So that's the other thing with these hotspots is looking at what compound is present. You can then go back to, was it firefighting foam, or was it a paper coating, or was it whatever. So like they leave the PFAS or PFOA compound that's there, helps you figure out what the source was. So that's what I prepared. I'm happy to answer other questions or, yeah.
So how many bluegills equal a meal?
I'm going to say read the Choose Wisely booklet that's on the DNR website, and it'll tell you exactly if it's 8 ounces or whatever. But it's, I mean, like, okay, so you eat, 10, 12, 15 fillets, right? I mean, I love eating bluegills, but that's probably 2 or 3 meals, right? I mean, compared to what the standard is. Like, so, and, you eat Friday night and then Saturday morning you're gonna have a fish sandwich for breakfast. Like, I get it. So that's why it's like you got to be mindful about what actually constitutes a meal and how much you're eating. So, but go to the DNR website and the Choose Wisely pamphlet or booklet that lays all that out about what is a meal. And then it's also because, like, I mean, so I had baked walleye last night for dinner at my house, and it says wild caught in Canada. Well, I would bet you dollars to donuts it was caught out of Lake Erie. Do you think there's PFAS in Lake Erie? And so even though I'm buying something from the store, like you have to be mindful about how much fish you're eating in general, and where it's coming from. So.
You said you can ask Truax to clean it up, or you can ask the fire department to clean it up. Why doesn't DNR say get off their ass and clean it?
That's a great question. I think it is at a political point of like, and the lawsuit with 3M about who's going to pay for it, and I mean the state has some authority to like we could actually force them to clean. Like all that's happening, but it's happening very slow. And I guess I'm voicing some frustration as not only a resource manager, but also somebody who really participates and fishes a lot and eats fish out of the lake. So I'm voicing some frustration with that too.
Kind of like the PCBs.
Yeah. But I mean, once they started cleaning up the Fox River in Green Bay, they really cleaned it up. And there was lots of other benefits when they did that cleanup too. So I mean, now there's whitefish that come into those rivers and spawn once they actually cleaned up the Fox River, right? So.
Is there any mercury problems in the state anymore?
Oh, for sure. So, but most of the mercury problems are up north because of mercury is mobilized into the food web in more acidic environments. And down here, our lakes are really well buffered and not very acidic. And so when you go up north, mercury, like if you look at where the mercury contamination is, it's all from atmospheric deposition. But in those lakes that are much softer and more acidic, it mobilizes into the food web way faster. And so that's why up north, mercury is a bigger issue than down here. Mercury doesn't mobilize into our food web. I mean, we had PCB warnings on like carp in Monona before, but that was about the biggest extent of any kind of consumption advisory we had until the PFAS. So.
You mentioned like Cherokee Marsh and Kegonsa have had carp removal.
Yep.
Like
And Wingra.
Would you recommend, me as an amateur fisherman, should I be destroying carp? When I catch them?
So here's my feeling on that, is that one person is not going to shift a whole lake on what you do. So if you like to shoot carp and you have fun doing it, go shoot some carp, right? I think it's great that people want to remove carp out of our lakes. What I ask for people who do that is have a plan for your carp. Don't dump them in the ditch as you're driving home later that night and whatever, because I love answering the phone and being like, hey, there's like 35 carp sitting in the ditch in front of my house. It's like, okay, well, that's littering, and I'm sorry somebody did that, but like that happens. So like, if you've got a buddy who does food plots for deer hunting and wants some fertilizer, have a plan for what you're going to do with your carp ahead of time. But I do think there is some benefit to keeping people harvesting carp and removing them. They're an invasive species, and we're trying to figure out better ways to manage them. But once they are below a certain threshold, lakes are way healthier and in a more stable state and clearer when the carp numbers are low.
Do you have any plans for another commercial harvest?
Not right now, because all the lakes are in really pretty good condition. Right.
But if they were to elevate, would you?
Yeah, we could go back and do another commercial thing. We're working on Indian Lake in the western part of the county, the county park. We're still working on trying to get the carp numbers down there. We've got to have real good partnership with Dane County, and 2 failed carp removals and chemical treatments, and now we're just doing some netting out to get the last ones out, but hoping to see some water quality responses there too. So we are still actively working on carp management stuff.
There's quite a few northern pike in there right now.
Yeah, Indian? Yeah. There's some nice bluegills and there's actually some channel cats that got stocked in there too. It's a neat little fishery.
Just out of curiosity, someone sometimes likes to fish for carp. Do you have any like data on the size structure of the carp, or like kind of like you went through with the other species? And what would you say would be like the largest size pound-wise carp in the chain of lakes here?
So when we do our normal fish surveys, we look specifically at the fish that we manage for recreational sport fishing. We've done some carp projects that are specific. So on Kegonsa, we have good carp data, but we're doing it with the idea that we're going to remove the carp and get rid of them. Helps us estimate the biomass, total biomass. So Cherokee, there's a good report actually on our website with the Cherokee data that talks about how fast they were growing, the age structure, some of this other data for carp. But it was done with the idea that we're going to remove them and understanding more about recruitment, how many fish are coming in, how many fish are dying, how fast they grow. Understanding that helps us manage the species better to get rid of them. So I don't have great carp data about, oh yeah, this is what a trophy carp in the Madison lakes would be. I haven't jumped on the bandwagon of like, well, they're here and they're non-native and we're just going to accept them. I get that people like fishing for them, and you know, we've tried to catch them, me and my kids, just for fun to go catch some carp. But I don't have great data as far as like on a normal survey. We don't measure the length, we don't measure the weight, we count them. So in our normal data, we just have carp counts. We don't do the same kind of data we do with bluegills and bass and perch.
Do you know like kind of how many population-wise? I mean, there's tons of them.
So we kind of have rough idea. So if we're doing a removal project like Indian Lake, we know we have a pretty good idea the number of carp and the pounds of carp that are left in the lake, because we've got removal goals and we go out there and we estimate and we keep track of that. And then the normal lakes, I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is you see them because they're very obnoxious and very obvious in their spawning behavior. And so we still get comments from people on Kegonsa, oh, there's still too many in the lake, you still got to come get them. It's like, actually, no, we did an estimate on Kegonsa, and there's less than 100 pounds per acre. There's like 70 pounds per acre. Actually, I have a population estimate and some weight estimates from Kegonsa because we did a removal project there, and the numbers are very, very low. But they're very, very obvious when they spawn, and so people are like, oh, there's all these carp. And it's like, yeah, well, it's because all the carp in the lake are congregating in one area to spawn together. And so that behavior makes them very obvious. And so the Madison lakes really don't have that many carp comparatively. Like we just did a removal project on Yellowstone of carp and buffalo, and we removed on a 400-acre lake 350,000 pounds of buffalo and 40,000 pounds of carp. When we did the Kegonsa removal, so Kegonsa is a 3,000-acre lake, we removed just shy of 500,000 pounds. Our goal was 2 million pounds, but at the same time in 2017, we had that koi herpes virus came through and killed off a bunch from a virus. And so we never really got to our goal, or we knew exactly how many, because the virus killed off a lot of them too. But we took 500,000 pounds out of the lake over 4 years.
What was your plan to dispose of that 500,000 pounds?
Those all got sold to market. Yeah. So commercial fishermen, when we do those contract removals, they can sell them at the market. So like the Yellowstone contract that we just did, those fish went live on trucks to New York and got sold. So the best markets for carp are during Passover in the spring and during Christmas in the fall. And the spring Passover is really for Jewish ethnical, like making gefilte fish. And the Christmas market is Eastern Europeans who, like we do a Thanksgiving turkey in Wisconsin. It's Christmas carp in Poland and Ukraine and whatever, and it's like a traditional holiday to serve with potato salad and pickles. Like but that market is really dying off. The Passover market is still pretty strong in the spring. The Christmas carp market is really dying off. And then the other thing that's changed with the carp market is farm-raised carp in Europe, as well as the Asian carp that are in the Mississippi and the Illinois and the Ohio river systems. Those carp are filling a lot of the other, like cat food and some of the other, even human food. Like those carp are so more abundant, and like those state governments are subsidizing fishermen to fish them. So the commercial fishermen that fish on the Mississippi River and we use for inland contracts struggle to sell carp now during the summer. They really have a hard time selling them because all the Asian carp and some of the other things. Spring, no problem. They can sell carp, no problem. But in the summer, it doesn't really work anymore. There used to be a guy in Iowa, Stoller Fish Market, and he would take the pituitary gland out and sell that for making trout pellets. He would sell the flesh both to a restaurant in Omaha and he would can it and stuff. And so he would piece it up, but that guy died. And so the only one processor left is a Schaefer fish in Illinois. And Illinois, they're getting mostly Asian carp now. So the market has changed dramatically in the past 15 years for how they can sell carp because of the Asian carp coming up the Mississippi.
Do fish swim at Tenney Park from the Hare River into Lake Mendota?
Very rarely. So they can. We've had tagged fish, including muskie, that have gone through and we've captured them in Mendota. So I know of, like, in my 14 years of being the supervisor here, we've had 2 muskies in Mendota, and one of them was a tagged fish from Monona. So I don't know if a person moved it or if it swam, but fish can move through the lock at Tenney, but it's not very regular.
I saw one last spring, 100%.
Yeah, I believe it. But it's not regular.
Water was real clear, it's plain as day.
Yeah. So.
Right over Lake Eddie.
Yeah. I mean, they can do it. When the boat lock operates, they can move through. But it's not normal.
Hey, what's the crappie situation on Mendota?
So it is low. Crappies are a hard one for us to survey because they come in after the muskie netting gets done, but before we do like if we time our spring shocking right, we can actually get a good sample. But they're in and out, unlike bluegills, which are on their beds for a while and staging. And then crappie populations are like this, right? So even if you have a really low crappie population, if you get the right environmental conditions, 2 years from now you could have a big crappie year class. It's just the way crappies are. And so right now there aren't a ton of crappies out there to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean there won't be in 2 years. They're hard to manage because of that. But the bag limit should help. The bag limit reduction should help. But to be honest, we really are focused on the perch and the bluegill numbers coming back up. And the crappie numbers should come back up too.
The walleye numbers on Mendota, I know they're low as far as reproducing, but how much do they naturally reproduce?
That is a great question. And so we've got a lot of fall data that looks at, walleyes when they're this big. And so I would say about every 7 years they pull off a good year class on the Madison chain. Like 2 years ago on Kegonsa, 2 years ago on Kegonsa, because it was last fall we shocked, we saw a lot of yearlings that didn't match up with any of our stocking, and we didn't do any genetic testing, but I'm pretty certain like 2022 was a really good natural year class on Waubesa and Kegonsa. And Waubesa's got good reproduction, Mendota's got good reproduction, Kegonsa's got good reproduction, and the river systems there. Monona benefits from all the lakes and the fish moving through it. We don't stock Monona at all, but there's plenty of walleyes in there. But I would say about every 7 years we detect a really good year class that's not from stocking.
Could the spiny water flea move through the system?
Oh, it already has. It's all the way through all the lakes. I don't know if it's in Wingra, but like I said, the spiny water flea is more impactful in these big, deep pelagic lakes. In the lakes that have more littoral zone, I don't think the spinies are impacting the food web as much as they are in the lakes that have big, deep, open water.
Why is that?
Cause so like same thing. They're really impactful in Lake Michigan. So they're a little water flea that with plants and stuff, and there's all sorts of so it's the habitat it prefers. It wants to be out in the open water floating around and preying on zooplankton out there. When it gets into probably these plant-dominated areas, it's just not the right habitat for it. And so, Squaw Bay and Turville Bay and Monona Bay are so plant-dominated that the bluegills in there aren't competing with spiny water fleas for food. There's lots of other food that they're in there with. So it's probably not a great answer, but it's just the habitat type, right? So
is the zooplankton in Lake Mendota relatively healthy compared to when the first spiny water flea infestation occurred?
So I'm not sure, like relatively healthy, like the zooplankton in Mendota has gone through a lot of changes. So the biomanipulation project that happened in the early 90s, when they decreased, and also one thing that happened is the Cisco died off just because it got too hot. Like all these big-bodied zooplankton like Daphnia pulicaria in Mendota showed up and started really grazing down the algae. So yeah, the zooplankton community has changed. With the spiny water fleas, those big-bodied cladocerans or the Daphnia have disappeared and changed. And so the Center for Limnology has done a really good job, and they've got a couple different people that have studied this, of looking at the zooplankton community changes since the invasion of the spinies. And so I won't say healthy, but it's definitely changed. So they've also, Dick Lathrop and some of the Center for Limnology researchers showed that the grazing pressure of the zooplankton results in different algae too. And so when the biomanipulation happened, yeah, we got more big-bodied zooplankton, but they ate the yummy algae and left the scummy blue-green stuff. And so we got clearer water, but we get more scums, blue-green scums. And so nature isn't super like, oh, you do this and it's going to happen. Like there's some unintended consequences. And so you'd never think, well, these zooplankton are going to be focused in which algae they eat. And now we've got this unintended consequence of blue-green scums happening. So some of those blue-green scums aren't as common anymore because it's gotten a little bit clearer, but like we've also had, there was these weird like brown algae blooms under the ice like 5 years ago, and that they thought was something to do with the spinies too. I don't know exactly what, but it was an unusual thing. I mean, people are calling us like, why underneath the ice are we seeing a brown algae bloom? Like that's something's really weird is going on. So. That's another really great question that I don't know the answer to, other than they are becoming more prolific. We are seeing more and more of them on piers and docks. Are they going to get to a level where they start to filter and clear up the water like has happened on the Mississippi River or like has happened on Lake Michigan? Don't know. They definitely are, predicted to impact some of the native unionid mussels by like they crust over them and compete with them. But I don't know what the impacts are going to be other than they're annoying. The power plants that suck water out of the lakes are having to clean out and deal with the intake structures being crusted and filled up with them. And so from a food web perspective, I don't know what the answer is going to be.
So are any of the other ones coming in, like the quagga mussel?
Hopefully not. We haven't seen the quagga mussel yet. That doesn't mean it won't. People need to clean their gear. People need to be really mindful of letting stuff, washing it off, letting it dry. We have steam cleaners, so when we go between the lakes, we steam off all of our stuff, which is the best because it kills basically everything. And then you're not having to, put chemicals and stuff on. But, your water pump and your outboard motor is pretty hard to clean. And so if, you're going to go somewhere that isn't infected. If you're going between the 5 Madison lakes, they're all kind of the same, right? But if you're going to go up to your cottage, probably a good idea to pull your boat out, dry everything off for 5 days so you're not taking spiny water fleas up north. It's just common sense, and it's an investment in your future as well as everybody else's to not transport that stuff around. I don't know what other big invasive species is on the horizon. I will say that I got to ID Asian mud eels last summer that the wardens bought at a market, and they were live eels that were illegally imported, and it's like, holy cow, I cannot believe these are here. And the wardens have a specific task force that's looking at these commercially sold fishers that are sold live and imported in from fish markets in Boston and New York, and they're working really hard at trying to keep that stuff out, and they're doing a good job of it. But it's pretty scary that some of that stuff is moving around.
So are they looking to do things like in Minnesota where they're setting up those decontamination sites for boats and stuff at the different lakes and stuff?
There's some of those, but I think that it's all, I mean, so those are great ideas, but then like all of a sudden people are using them as car washes, or, you know, somebody's got to maintain and pay for it. I mean, I think that the number one thing is just people being personally responsible for their boat. And you can take it to a car wash, you can take it, you know, dry it out for 5 days. I don't see, we tried to do one of those wash stations at a boat launch that we helped pay for up at the Wisconsin Dells actually, and they just didn't have enough room to deal with, because now you've got wash water that has to go into like a, you know, a rain garden or whatever, and it just was too expensive and too, like it didn't work out. And so I don't see those becoming super popular, even though they are kind of a good idea. I mean, you can take your boat to a car wash. You know, basic biology, protein starts to denature at about 140 degrees. So like if you're going to cook an egg and you see the egg whites turn white, it doesn't have to be boiling, but at 140 degrees you start to denature proteins. And so any little living organism on there, as long as it's not caked in mud that insulates it from that heat, if you can get a hot water wash on there with a car wash or whatever, like that'll clean your stuff up. And you don't have to use bleach or Virkon or 409 or any of the chemical products. Heat or drying, clean it and then just let it dry for 5 days is pretty effective. So
Got any update on Fish Lake? Change the subject.
I don't have any update on Fish Lake. That was one of the lakes we did the genetics pike project on, and the water level's down a little bit. I know that. Most of the houses that were underwater, Dane County bought out and removed. There may be one or two holdouts that still are there. The county bought a bunch of stuff on the south shoreline too. If I was going to go to Fish Lake, I would fish bass. There are 6 and 7 pound largemouth bass in Fish Lake, and they're giant pig fish. When fish came up and connected with mud, all these little bluegills and little carp that were in mud got in there, and the bluegills or the bass are growing to beat the band because there's a ton of food. It's changed the lake, right? It used to be this deep 2-story lake with this wall of Eurasian water milfoil around the perimeter, but now that it got up and it flooded out and there's more littoral habitat, I think the fish are growing faster. I think there's a recent report from Nate Nye, the point biologist, actually supervises or manages crystal and fish. So Nate, I would look on the website and Nate's got a good report on fish. We did sample it, I think, in 2021. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Give Dave a big round of applause. Yeah. Thanks so much. That was very informative. Very, yeah.
Great, except for my laser pointer.
I really enjoy this stuff. Yeah. We can do a prize giveaway. Paul, you in here?
No, I'm gonna go.
Well,
Thank you.
Welcome to get in. Anybody not have their name in the bucket? All right. Well, got some good odds of winning. Dave, would you mind picking a name?
I can pick a name.
These are for, I just have some $10 gift cards to the shop. So.
Oh, I had 2. Sorry, whoever I almost had. Bob Meskey.
Bob Meskey? All right, there you go. Congratulations. And do another. I got 3 cards.
And Gary Jesse.
Gary? All right. Thank you much. These guys are going to take it all, huh?
One more, or that's
One more, yep. Yeah, should have sat in the 3rd row, I guess.
Doug.
Doug. Oh, 3rd row takes it. Jesus. All right. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Again, big round of applause for Dave. Did a great job. Thank you all for coming.
And I would always say, if you guys have questions, call us at the DNR or send us an email. We're happy to answer and try to get you the information.